absolute joy. I absolutely love tarot. So today we're going to have a little chat about the history, about what tarot means to people, and why people are scared of tarot, because there's still a lot of people who are really, really scared of tarot. In fact, whenever I teach somebody for the first time, I always say to them, right, if you go out and say to people, guess what, I'm learning tarot, there'll be at least one person who'll go, you don't want to do that, you're going to attract all this really bad stuff into you. And those readers of us, I bet you've had that, Pauline, haven't you? It's just so bizarre. People still have this strange idea about tarot. And to give you a perfect example of myself, back when I was 19, I worked in a finance company in Bedford Street in Exeter. And we used, back in those days, you didn't have your own photocopier in the office, so you had to go off to the stationers and get your photocopying done. So off I went to Eland in Bedford Street, paid over my 10p, and while I was waiting, because at that point I taught myself cards with playing cards, there was a tarot deck. I was 19, £5. So I bought it and I went back to the office, and my Irish manager went absolutely mental. And I mean shouting and screaming at me. If I took them home, my mum and dad would die, the house would burn down, all the evil would come to me. And he physically, and I really mean physically, dragged me back to the shop and made them give me a refund. That was 1980. And there are still people that think that way. I have a friend who actually works in Glastonbury. She lives on the outskirts. She does tarot. Now, Glastonbury is the most open-minded place in the world. A few years ago, somebody chucked a bucket of water over her for teaching, well, for doing tarot readings. So there, even in a place like Glastonbury, it's still looked down a bit scary. Oracle cards, angel cards are fine, but tarot, ooh. So why is that? And this is what's interesting about tarot, because I am the most practical and cynical psychic you'll ever met. So I like to know why things are done in a certain way. So I'm going to ask you first of all a question. There might be a few of you here that still do it. Who's ever heard that it's unlucky to buy your own deck of tarot cards? Anybody ever heard that? Yeah. Now as years go on, less and less people are putting their hands up. That's why I learnt with playing cards. Because even though my mum encouraged me to do psychic stuff, even she said to me, it's unlucky. But why is it unlucky? And this is where the history comes in. It's quite interesting because nobody really knows where tarot came from. Lots of conjecture. It came over from China, it came from Egypt, all these different things. But the reason nobody knows is quite simply, it's not written down anywhere until the 1300s, when it was mentioned that King Alphonse of Spain banned it, as did the Roman Church, the Roman Catholics. It's the book of the devil. You think, well, yeah, the devil's in a deck of tarot cards, but there's a lot more angels in there, so he's sort of outnumbered completely. You think, well, that's a bit odd. But the more you look into it, what the church were actually concerned about was actually it was used for gambling. And it's one thing they didn't like is people, particularly the ordinary man in the street, was to use it for gambling. So that's what they were more, that's why it was the book of the devil, because it was encouraging people to spend their money and squander it when they should have been paying that to the church. So that's how they look at it. So it sort of starts making sense. So you've got Spain that's banned it, the church that's banned it in Rome, but then you've got Italy, really big in Italy, because it was a game of trumps. That's all it was. Tarot wasn't invented. Oh, I do this a lot, by the way. A 1980s, 90s manager. Oh, yes, cascade it down to the people down below, you know, sort of thing. It was all about playing cards. That's all it was. But the only people who would have been able to afford those cards were the high and mighty, the titled, because all the cards back then would have been hand printed and hand coloured. That costs money. So the only people who could really afford them were the rich and famous, the lords and ladies, or whatever they be calling. Well, anybody speak Italian here? Oh, is that it? Right, well, the only reason I ask is because I've never been able to figure out what they call tarot in Italian. And I've asked a couple of people who speak Italian, and they always have a different answer. So I'm going to attempt this. It's either tarocchi or tarocchi. You know, I've got to do the hands with it. Tarocchi. I don't know. But you think about it, who subsidises the church are the rich and famous and the lords and ladies. So that's overlooked, that they're all playing this game of trumps. It's the same in Germany. Germany, again, they called it Tarok. I'm not going to do a German accent. Tarok or Tarok. Again, I don't know how you actually pronounce it. So all this is going on. Ordinary man in the street's not touching them. However, the following century, Gutenberg's printing press came along. Suddenly, things became cheaper to produce. Pamphlets, books, tarot cards. And if you look at earlier decks, they're very simple, a bit like Art Deco ones, really. It's very simple, sort of 4 or 5 colours. That's all they had, no shadings or anything. So suddenly, it became more accessible to the ordinary man in the street. And you can imagine, as it got to Paris, France, all these, who named it tarot. I'm going to do a French accent now, sorry about this. So you imagine all the guys, because a lot of the cards in tarot, there's a lot of naked people in it. So you imagine them in the bars or whatever they call them, look at the woman with the big boobies, you know, it's a bit risque, that sort of thing. But there's still this thing, but it was banned. And how did it get across Europe? That's where the Romanies come in. And I like this idea. We don't know for sure, simple as that. But it makes sense that the Romanies, transient, come across Europe, spreading it out. And one thing the Romanies are amazing at, prediction. Whether it's with rooms, crystal balls, palm reading. So you've got this wonderful deck of cards, which, how many of you have got a deck of cards, have ever looked at a deck of tarot cards? Well, most people. Within the major arcana, they're your important, side of the cards. It is the fool's journey. It is a story of the fool setting out on his journey, completely innocent, and he goes through life, experiences happy things, sad things, falls in love, scary stuff, loses everything, just like real life. And that's the great thing. And so it's an automatic thing to move on to. How great for prediction. And so it did. Eventually came over to the UK. Now, I am quite sure that somebody here, at least one person, will know the answer to this. When did the 1735 Witchcraft Act get repealed? Anybody know? 1735. Pauline's going.
I think it was 52, wasn't it?
1951. Probably went over to 52. Yeah. So 1735 up to 1950, you could have been arrested for being a witch. Now, you're not going to be burnt at the stake and you're not going to be hung. But you might not even go to prison, but you would have that stigma. So back to this, it's unlucky to buy your cards. If you had a daughter or a mother or sister or somebody said, do you know what, I quite like the idea of learning tarot, I'm going to go and buy a deck of tarot cards. What are you going to say? Oh, you don't want to do that, it's unlucky to buy your own deck. It's a safety net. And you start thinking about this and you realise, actually, that all makes sense. It's purely a safety net, but that sticks constantly, and that's why so many people are worried about tarot. It is simply a storybook. In fact, many readers actually call it a book of tarot. They don't say it's a deck, they call it a book of tarot. And it's used for so many things. Yes, you can use it for prediction, but you can use it for counselling. Nobody thinks twice about going to a library and getting a self-help book. It's all there in the cards. You can use it for meditation. I mean, even now, you know, a lot of people, when you go for meditation, when you first start meditating, they say, oh, picture a flickering candle. I picture the Ace of Pentacles. That's my meditation thing. Picture it now. That's what I do. You can use it for healing. If you're concentrating on a particular card to send healing. All right, if you want to, if you're a bit witchy, you can do some nice white magic with it. I don't look at that side of it, but you can. So there's so many, and of course you can play a game of trumps with it. I don't know how you play trumps with it, but there's all these things that you can actually do with it. It is not just something scary that you can do prediction with. That's the whole point. So there's so many different ways you can look at tarot. Now you've got the books that say the Ace of Pentacles means this, and the Queen of Cups means this. And yes, traditionally it would. But what I always say to people is use your intuition. So I'm going to say to you all, what do you think? Shout it out. If you see a white feather fall in front of you, what do you think? What crosses your mind? Come on. An angel? Angels? Yeah. Some people say spirits, a loved one. If I'm as happy as Larry and I'm walking on with my Magnum, I'll just think, oh, a cat's caught a bird. Or there's a bird molting. If I'm having a bad day and I see one, I think everything's going to be fine. So it can depend on the time and the day. So you could do a reading for somebody with one card and tell them whatever. The next day, you could do the same reading for the same person with the same card, and it will be completely different because 24 hours have gone. The world has turned. Things have moved on. So if you stick to the actual rigid book meanings, for one thing, what would be the point of going to see different readers? Because you're all going to get exactly the same answer. But if you use your intuition, you get a much more clearer picture of what's going on in your life, if you're doing it for yourself, or for the person you're working for. I'm very strong. When I do either psychic development or tarot, I always say what you see. No matter how ridiculous it might seem, it might make perfect sense to the person you're talking to. And I'm giving you an example here. A few years ago, I was working at the Healing Weekend at Highbridge, and I had a lady there for a reading, and she was completely po-faced, not even a raised eyebrow, so you had no idea at all whether you were doing it right, wrong, or whatever. So remember, it's like a 30-minute reading. So I said, and this is shortened, obviously, I said, right, I can't believe I'm saying this because I've never said this ever. You're going on a long journey over water. I have never said that. That's so crass. I said, you're either going to America or Australia. When you get there, you're going to meet somebody you already know, and they're going to tell you something that you've already figured out. Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. So then there was something about starting a new business. And then, and I thought, I'm going to have to practice what I preach here. I'm seeing butlers in the buff. Does anybody not know what a butler in the buff is? Do you all know what butlers in the buff is? Oh, I can't believe it. Really? Butlers in the buff are basically hot guys, young guys, who go to hen parties and things like that, serving canapes and cocktails. They're completely naked except for a little, Harry does it in his spare time, a little apron here. That's butlers in the buff. And I thought, I can't say this. I thought, no, I've got to practice what I preach. I said, and for some reason, I'm seeing butlers in the buff, completely straight-faced. Anyway, when I finished, I said, well, how did I get on? She said, in 3 weeks, me and my husband are going to Australia. Oh, got that bit right. We're going to visit my son. Aha, that's the person you already know. She goes, we are quite sure that, bearing in mind he's now 30 and he's never had a girlfriend, that he's finally going to come out to us and admit he's gay. And I said, is that a problem? She goes, no, we've known since he was about 11 or 12. We're quite looking forward to him actually admitting it, sort of thing. Okay. But what he wants to do, he wants to come back to the UK and start a business with me. I said, oh, right, okay. So I said, butlers in the buff? And she did start to laugh at this point. And she said, he is a butler in the buff, and that's the business he wants to start with me in the UK. I thought, yes! Now, if I was that good all the time, I wouldn't be living in a one-bedroom back-to-back house, believe me. But I was quite pleased about that. Say what you see, no matter how bizarre things may mean. Really, really interesting. So how do people get into tarot? Me personally, I started when I was about 12 or 13. When my mum, for someone, well, she obviously saw something in me. I've been seeing things since I was a kid and whatever. And back in the 70s, for those of us old enough to remember you used to be able to buy monthly magazines that you could build into a big binder and have these books. You remember them? They actually cost hundreds of pounds long term, didn't they? Well, this one was called Fate and Fortune. Does not resemble the magazine you get now. The one you get nowadays is all fluffy and girly and angelic. This is hard-hitting paranormal stuff. It covered everything from spiritualism to ESP to UFOs and things like that. And the very first issue, it was about tarot. Well, I couldn't have a deck of tarot cards because A, I didn't get any pocket money, and B, where on earth in 1973 would you buy a deck of tarot cards? I wouldn't even know where to look for one. So I learnt with playing cards, which is another way. And then I progressed through to tarot. So people start in different ways. Some people start with oracle cards. And then people say to me, well, what's the difference? Some people come on my workshop and say, oh, I do read. I've got a tarot deck, and they bring it, and it's an oracle deck. Oracle decks are different from tarot decks. Tarot decks have a specific structure. They have the major arcana, which is the Fool's Journey, the story of him. And then there's always 4 suits. And those 4 suits represent elements. So you've got air, earth, fire, and water. Now, in a normal deck, say, oh, I did it again, didn't I? Normal deck, that would be cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. and each of them represent pentacles are things like security and earth. It's an earth sign, and so on and so forth. No matter what deck of tarot cards you buy, it will follow the same structure. So you could have the Cat Tarot, you could have the Star Trek Tarot, the Game of Thrones Tarot. It doesn't matter which deck you buy. They might change the names of those suits or even the names of the major arcana, but they will still follow that structure. An oracle deck doesn't. An oracle deck, the only structure it may have is one that whoever's designed it puts in. So if you can read tarot, essentially you can read just about any deck. In saying that, it depends if the deck turns you on. Sometimes I've had decks for years that I can't read this, and suddenly I can. So you've got to gel with the deck themselves. But there is a very big difference between, neither one's better than the other. It's just that's how you differentiate. Most, not all, but most angel decks are oracle decks. That's the way it works. Some, you do get some angelic tarot decks and things like that, but most of them are. You get flower oracle decks. They always just say oracle. Every now and then you get a tarot deck that says it's a tarot deck, and then you get it, and it's not. They're lying. It's not a tarot deck at all. It hasn't got, it's got 43 cards in it or something like that. 78 cards in a tarot deck, and that frightens people if they want to learn. Oh my goodness, I've got to learn 78 cards. No, you don't. It's useful. And if you want to learn the traditional meanings, long term, that will help you in your journey in tarot. If you're using your intuition, as long as you understand the Fool's Journey, which is a story, and you understand the I'm going to say 4 elements, that's 3, isn't it? 4 elements, then you can read a deck of tarot cards. And it can really help you as well as your friends and your family. That's why I love tarot. Things over the years have changed. Years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the majority of women that would come for a reading would say, am I going to get married? I'm going to meet somebody, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a baby. Bizarrely, because always more women come to readings than men, but bizarrely, every man that's ever come in the past to me and said, can you give me a tarot reading? Or is it about anything specific? Am I going to have a relationship? I want to meet someone. So there we are. Anybody who's looking for a guy, there are guys out there who want relationships, and they always come to hover around, spiritual fairs. So if there's one going for a reading, who's looking for a relationship, all right? Because that's what they do. Now, as years have moved on, nowadays, I've never thought of that actually. I should try that. I wonder, right. But nowadays, things have changed. I would say 90% of women come to me about their career, potential businesses, and moving house. And if I've got 10 minutes left, I'm going, come on, you've got 10 minutes left. You get your money's worth. They go, oh, I don't know, what can I ask? Oh, I know. Am I going to meet someone? It's like, it's an afterthought. Men still come about relationships. Nothing has changed in that way, which is really bizarre. You would think that men would be asking about businesses and things like that. So, men are softer than you actually think. Even, just close their ears there, so aren't you, Harry? You're softer than you, yeah, right.
Even eventually.
Yeah, probably. So it's also with men, when they come for readings, it's very interesting how I've experienced it. That when a guy has come for a reading who's never, ever, ever had a tarot reading, he sits there, he's all scared, I go, don't worry, and he goes, but what if I get the death card? You're not James Bond, I'm not Solitaire, this isn't Live and Let Die. You're not going to die. And that's the thing, people have these perceptions for what they've seen on TV. So in Live and Let Die, she goes, the death card and everything. So it's not, every time that film comes on, you can guarantee that anybody that rings tarot is shouting, it doesn't mean death, it doesn't mean death, not in the way that they're explaining it. And also, you've got this, with the film industry and the TV industry, they get things wrong. And this was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was watching a film about, of all things, God knows why I was watching it, about Napoleon. And there really must have been nothing on TV. I'm watching this film about Napoleon. So he's standing in his tent on the night of the battle, and he's got his, whatever you would call it, soothsayer or whatever with him. And he said, how is my battle going to go? Am I going to win the battle tomorrow? Another French accent. And he whips out a deck of Rider-Waite cards. Well, they weren't invented for another 100 years. No, it's the wrong deck. You shouldn't be using that. So again, it's all about that perception of what tarot means and how it can be utilised. And we all do, and the thing about readers in general, we all do it differently. There's one thing that all work out, well, I'm going to say all. I said this once before at a talk, and somebody's shaking their head like this. I said, we all work from the heart, because that's in any spiritual type of business, whatever you want to call it, it's a spiritual tool, and you should be working from the heart, always working for the best intentions. So I'm saying this at this talk, and this woman's going like this. And I said, why are you shaking your head? She goes, I went for a reading once, and that I wanted to know if I could become a healer. And she goes, I really, really wanted to do healing. And this reader said, no, you can't do that. She goes, wasting your money, don't even bother. And she said this woman had had a lot of trauma in her life, and she goes, to be knocked down like that, she goes, I came out completely traumatized. She said, it set me back years, because she was so nasty about it. So even in the spiritual world, as we all know, there are some unspiritual people, but it's a spiritual tool. You use it for the best intentions, and we all do it differently. You know, I do. Most people come to me, not everybody, most people come to me with specific questions. That's the way I work. Pauline, I know Pauline, people go to you for other things, don't they? You know, we all work differently. And that's a good thing, because that means you can cherry pick who you want to go to. But it also means, if you're learning tarot, you find your own way, and that's what I encourage, is don't be a mini-me. I'll give you the basics, I'll give you the grounding, so that you can build on that and find your own way. It's like the symbolism that's involved. The symbolism, it's back to that white feather. It depends on what you feel that symbol means. And that's the important thing with it all. Tarot is such a fantastic, I know I keep going on about it, but it's such a fantastic tool to help you, even if it's a card a day. I mean, I don't look at the cards every day. And it's very rare that I do readings for myself, purely because you see what you want to see. It's like, right, so you're shuffling your cards, going, oh, I met a guy, does he like me? You know, or, are we going to get married? And let's shuffle the cards. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Oh, yes, he is. And you get there eventually. That's because you want to see what you want to see. So readers tend to go to other readers for readings. The only time I'll do a reading for myself is if I've got two possibilities and I really cannot decide between the two. They're both as good as bad as each other. Then I might do a reading. So I'm not swayed either way. But it's quite funny. And there was a lady who I trained, and I couldn't make a psychic fair once. So I said, you go and take my place. And she'd done readings before, but never in a psychic fair. She was a bit scared. And she rang me after she'd done really well. And she said, you know what was really odd? She said, I watched this lady, and she went to every single reader. And she said, there must have been a good 10, 12 readers in there, all at £20, £25 a time, had a reading with every single one of them. I think, A, she's obviously got too much money. She could give some to me. I don't mind that. But she said, couldn't believe it. I said, but that means those readers haven't told her what she wants to hear. And so she's going to the reader that tells her what she wants to hear, and then she'll say, that reader's great. All the other ones are probably saying, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this. And then she'll eventually find the one that says, oh yeah, you should do this. Oh, that's a great reader. You know, £150 later, I've heard what I want to hear. We all tend to want to hear what we want to hear, even when you're making a decision about what's in the news and things like that. But that's why most readers go to other readers for readings. Simple as that. Now, talking of that, I'll give you another example of myself. There are some readers that say it's set in stone. Whatever's come out on those cards, that is definitely going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, I don't agree with that. What is the point, to me, being boringly practical as I am, what is the point of being able to tell, right, this is going to happen, right, then do something about it. If you like it, carry on. If you don't like it, do something about it now. And I'll give you the perfect example, and this is true to life to me. When I got married back in the 90s to my ex-husband, Note, all love. We had a fantastic lifestyle. He worked in the Middle East. He had a fantastic job in the aircraft industry and everything like that. Had a very nice lifestyle. And we'd been married about 2 months, and he'd gone back to the Middle East. So me and my now late mother, we went to a big psychic fair that used to be in Exmouth in the Imperial Hotel. So I went for a reading with this guy who was either a Brummie or a Geordie, I'm not sure. And we sat down there, and of course I'm all happy and everything. Anyway, did a reading. And I saw the cards that he pulled, and I can picture them now. But because I was in love, and I thought my husband was wonderful, because all cards, no matter how negative they initially may look, have all got positive aspects to them. So I only saw the positive. Oh, yeah. And he said to me, he said, I don't know if you're married. You couldn't see my ring at the time, not because I was hiding it, it's just where I was sitting. But I know you're with somebody. You must leave him. I'll be married 2 months. You must leave him. Well, I would never tell anybody to do that, not unless they were being abused or something like that. Must leave him. Oh, what? You're going to come into some money, he said. He is going to take everything. He'll take your money that you're coming into. You will lose every single thing that you own. And I laughed. I actually laughed. I thought, my husband wouldn't do that. He's wonderful. I was in love and all this sort of stuff. And actually, as I went to leave, he actually grabbed my arm and said, you must listen to me. You must leave him. Well, I ignored him. My mum passed away about 6 months later, so he got inheritance from that, which, of course, joint account. My husband stole the lot. He was running up tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt on my credit cards. We eventually had to sell the house. We had nothing. We were constantly worried about them knocking on the door. Now, I might not have stopped that happening, but what I could have done, had I listened to him, is A, not put my inheritance in a joint account. I might have snaffled some away somewhere. I might have tied things up so that, okay, we still don't know to this day where the money went. I mean, we're on about, I think he owes me about £150,000. There's a lot of money. We don't know. We think he was probably gambling it. Who knows? But the whole point was, I might not have been able to change it completely, but I could have risen above it and I could have been prepared for it. So that's what's great about it. Forewarns you this might happen. It also gives you new options. So if you're, a lot of people get, it can be in your 20s, it can be in your 60s. And you think, I'm not on the right path. What am I going to do? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something different. Come to a reader and we'll look at the options. And we can look at, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to learn Reiki. I want to drive a steam engine, and you can do which would be better for you. Forget the steam engine. Let's go for the Reiki, that sort of thing. So it can be used for so many different things. And that's the positive thing about it. So how many people here actually give readings, if only for yourselves? You sort of have a play with your cards. Anybody? A few people, and obviously Pauline. With the
I do them for myself.
Oh, do you? Good. Well done.
Not very often, but if I've got something big coming up, I do.
Yeah.
And it's usually quite accurate.
Yeah. I find it depends on what I'm asking the question. Because if it's about relationships, can't do that. Yeah, whatever. I'll do somebody else's reading for them. But no, you don't want him. Go for him. We like him, sort of thing. We'll look at it that way. So when you're doing cards for yourself, it's a fantastic way of moving forward and making decisions. Sometimes it just opens up opportunities for you. You think, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, I'll look into that. So it's a handy thing to have. It's also a great laugh with you with friends and things like that. So what we're going to talk about now is symbolism within the tarot. Because what I want you all to do is do readings for yourselves. Well, you're going to do readings for each other. Oh my God. Now today is summer solstice. I'm in winter clothes. It's summer solstice today. From tonight, the nights are going to start getting shorter. Woohoo! It's already short, sort of thing. So in a minute, we're going to do some readings for each other, but based on what positive things are coming, because that's what summer solstice is all about. It's preparing yourself for the harvest later in the year, growth, abundance. So the readings you're going to give each other are going to be based purely on what's good that's coming into your life. Now remember I said every card has a positive side. Even if you get the devil or the death card, well, the death card is positive anyway, but if you get something that looks a bit dodgy, there will still be positives in there. But how do you do it? Now if you're looking in your intuition, if you don't know the traditional meanings, it's what it means to you. Back to the white feather. There's things to look out for that appear in a lot of cards. Now some of those things like clouds. Don't just look at the clouds in the sky. Blue sky is great, no clouds. Remember, clouds can cause shadows. But if it's a fluffy cloud, that's great. But if it's a jagged cloud, that could mean something really bad. It's an argument coming, something like that. Mountains appear in loads of the cards. They're all about challenges. Why do people climb mountains? Because it's there. It just means there's challenges coming. Where are those mountains? Are they close by? Are they in the distance? So if there's something's a long way away, it's coming, but it's miles away. You don't need to worry about it at the moment. Water. That appears in a lot of cards, not just the cups, which represents water. Waters are relationships, emotions, things like that. So if you see a stream in something, you think, oh, there's a stream there, or there's the sea. Oh, the sea's a bit, stormy there. Does that mean there's storms coming? Or is that person rising above the storm? Different ways to look at it. Look at the whole picture. Look at what jumps out at you. It might not be the great big sun that's slap bang in the middle. It might be a little snail that's down. Why is there a snail down there? And there is a snail in one of the cards. You think, what does a snail mean? Well, a snail is slow, but he carries his home on the back. He's protected. So when you start looking at the symbolism, it makes you start thinking about the next step. What's going on? What's going on? Green grass. Well, when we see green grass in real life, healthy grass. Things are growing. Growth, fantastic. But if you see barren earth, as in just dry earth, well, nothing's going to grow there, so it could be you're stagnant. Ploughed fields, they appear a lot. So we think when you see a ploughed field, it's ready to plant. It's there, freshly dug, ready for you to take things one step further. Snow is another thing. Snow appears a lot. What does snow do? Well, snow looks nice, but it covers things. So you don't know what's there until that snow melts. So it could be a case you're not ready to see it. It could be you've just got to wait until the spring comes or something like that, and the snow melts and you can see what's underneath it. But it's one of the things in one of my workshops I do when we do what's called reversals. That's cards upside down, which I'm not going to worry about today. But there's the Five of Pentacles, which is what I call a wobble card. So there's all this snow on the ground and big thing and everything. But if you turn it upside down, if you really go for it and really start looking at the complete opposite and look at the symbolism of it, so you've got all this snow that was on the ground is now up in the sky. And there's this great big huge stained glass window. So this is how I teach us. So this is taking it to extremes. So before, they were walking past this church, nice stained window, grass, snow, everything. When you turn it upside down, all the snow's up there. It's going to come down in one great big whoosh. It's going to hide the window, which that means they won't be able to see the window. They'll walk into the window, break the window, cut their leg open, bleed to death. They are. So, I mean, that's taking things to extreme. Laura said, I remember that one. But that's taking things. But use what pops into your head. It's what it means to you. Does that all make sense? Now, we'll mention, if you pull a major arcana, you will tell that because it will have a Roman numeral on there, and it will say what it is at the bottom. You may pull what we call the minor arcana. Now, they could be pentacles, which look like coins. In fact, some decks, they are called coins. That's an earth, that's earthy, and it's all about security and money and feet on the ground, that sort of stuff. Cups are water. Cups hold liquid, easy to remember. So that's relationships and emotions. We're just doing the basics. Then we've got swords. Swords are what a lot of readers come to me and they go, oh, thank God for that, I've got many swords. I like swords. You know, swords, well, I'm a Gemini, so I'm an air sign, so they're air signs. So swords are all about intellect, about thought. They're the less positive of the deck because they're usually warning you about something. In other words, they're just saying, look out for this because that'll happen. So they're warning you. So that's why I think they're positive cards. But they're also about, how do I normally put it? Oh, mental anguish. There we go. They're often about mental anguish. So you're really worried about stuff and you shouldn't need to be. They're air signs. And then we've got wands. Now, that's not Harry Potter wands. That's staffs, and they're often called staffs or staves. So they're usually long bits like that with bits growing out of them. Wands are fire cards. It's all the energy. It's creation and creativity and things like that. So look at that. And then you've got the court cards. Court cards, if you pull them, they invariably mean people, not always. It could be the attributes. So it might be the King of Cups. So cups are to do with, what are the cups to do with? Come on. Yeah, exactly, water, emotions and things like that. So he's a king. So perhaps he's in charge of his emotions.